5 years had passed since the first encounter between humans and aliens in the Kepler system, and Admiral Jake Morrison could hardly recognize the galaxy around him. The former captain of the Terra Nova now commanded a joint exploration fleet that included ships from dozens of different species all working together under human leadership. The bridge of his new flagship was a marvel of combined technology, where human intuition worked alongside alien precision to explore the furthest reaches of space. Commander Vextar stood beside Jake at the navigation console studying star charts that showed regions of space no one had ever explored before. The Zephyrian officer who had once attacked the Terra Nova was now one of Jake's most trusted advisors and had become an expert on architect installations throughout the galaxy. The gray-skinned alien with large black eyes had spent years learning to understand human emotions and had developed something resembling friendship with his former enemies. Ambassador Elena Vasquez worked from her office aboard Nexus Prime Station, coordinating the activities of the reformed Galactic Council. The organization had been completely restructured to reflect humanity's new role as inheritors of architect civilization. Elena found herself mediating disputes between species that had been enemies for centuries, while also helping newer civilizations understand their place in the cosmic order that was emerging. The galactic community had adapted to human leadership more easily than anyone had expected. Most species recognized that humanity's emotional depth and protective instincts made them natural shepherds for younger civilizations. The humans had proven their wisdom by refusing to use Guardian technology for conquest and instead focusing on exploration and peaceful development. Dr. Rachel Moss had become the director of the Architect Technology Institute on Earth, where she led teams of human and alien scientists in unlocking the secrets left behind by their predecessors. The Institute's main campus was built around the transformed Stonehenge site, where ancient stones now served as focusing crystals for consciousness-based technology that seemed to operate through pure thought. Rachel had made tremendous progress in understanding how architect technology bridged the gap between mind and matter. Human volunteers were learning to manipulate objects at the quantum level using meditation techniques combined with crystalline amplification systems. Some individuals showed natural talent for these abilities, while others required extensive training to achieve even basic results. The most gifted humans were beginning to demonstrate capabilities that would have been considered impossible just a few years earlier. They could heal injuries by restructuring damaged tissue at the cellular level and could communicate telepathically across vast distances using properly tuned crystal networks. A few exceptional individuals had even learned to extend their consciousness into space to directly observe distant star systems. Jake's exploration fleet had discovered 17 new species during their current mission to the galactic rim, where ancient architect installations were beginning to activate after millions of years of dormancy. Each discovery brought new challenges as the humans worked to determine whether these civilizations were ready to join the galactic community or needed more time to develop peacefully on their own. The most recent discovery had been troubling, because the species they found was facing extinction from a dying star that threatened to destroy their entire solar system. The aliens had developed space travel, but lacked the technology needed to evacuate their population to safety. Jake found himself facing the same kind of decision that the architects must have made countless times throughout their long history. Elena received the request for emergency assistance while she was mediating a trade dispute between two minor species. The message from Jake's fleet described a civilization of crystalline beings whose homeworld would be destroyed within months unless someone intervened to help them escape. The decision to act would set important precedents for how humanity would handle similar situations in the future. The reformed Galactic Council voted unanimously to authorize a rescue mission, but the logistics were staggering. Moving an entire planetary population across interstellar distances would require resources and technology that had never been used for such purposes. Elena worked with Guardian advisors to develop a plan that would save the endangered species without disrupting the development of other nearby civilizations. Dr. Moss and her team were asked to develop new applications of architect technology that could safely transport millions of crystalline beings to a new homeworld. The project required combining consciousness-based manipulation with large-scale engineering in ways that pushed even their advanced understanding to its limits. Rachel found herself working directly with Guardian AIs to design systems that could relocate an entire biosphere. The rescue operation became a joint effort involving ships and personnel from over 30 different species, all coordinated through human leadership. Jake commanded the largest fleet ever assembled for a peaceful purpose, while Guardian vessels provided the advanced technology needed to actually move planets and rearrange solar systems. The mission demonstrated the new cosmic order where humanity served as coordinators for galactic civilization. Commander Vextar led one of the advanced teams that made contact with the crystalline beings and explained what was being offered to save their civilization. The aliens were initially suspicious of outside interference, but eventually agreed to accept help when they realized the alternative was complete extinction. Their gratitude toward humanity would influence their development for generations to come. The actual relocation took place over several weeks as Guardian technology was used to carefully extract the crystalline beings from their dying world and transport them to a new solar system that had been prepared for their arrival. Entire cities were moved intact while the planet's ecosystem was preserved and re-established on their new homeworld. The operation succeeded without losing a single life. Elena watched the conclusion of the rescue mission from her office on Nexus Prime and reflected on how much had changed since humans first encountered alien civilization. The species that had once been classified as aggressive primitives were now recognized as the natural leaders of galactic society. Other species looked to humanity for guidance, while humans looked to the architect legacy for wisdom about their cosmic responsibilities. Dr. Moss published her final report on the rescue operation and noted that humanity had successfully used architect technology to preserve an entire civilization. The project had required new levels of cooperation between human consciousness and alien technology that pointed toward even greater possibilities for the future. She predicted that within a few decades humans would be capable of creating new worlds and even new forms of life. Jake received orders to lead his fleet toward an even more distant galaxy, where Guardian sensors had detected signs of another civilization that might qualify for protection status. The journey would take several years, even using the most advanced architect technology, but the mission represented humanity's graduation from protected species to active guardians of galactic life. The departure ceremony took place at Nexus Prime, where representatives from hundreds of species gathered to wish the human-led expedition success in their historic mission. Elena gave a speech about humanity's commitment to protecting and nurturing life throughout the universe, while Guardian ships provided an honor escort as the fleet departed for intergalactic space. Vextar stood beside Jake on the bridge of their flagship as they entered the void between galaxies where no living being had traveled for millions of years. The former enemies had become partners in the greatest adventure in galactic history as they carried the Architect mission forward into unexplored regions of space. Behind them, the Guardian fleets began their own historic transition as their ancient vigil over humanity finally came to an end. The massive ships that had protected Earth for 5 years started departing for destinations unknown as their AI commanders, prepared to join the architects in whatever realm of existence awaited beings who had transcended physical form. Dr. Moss felt the change as architect installations throughout human space began their final phase of knowledge transfer. The remaining secrets of cosmic civilization were being downloaded into human consciousness as the species prepared to take full responsibility for their inheritance. Within her lifetime, humans would possess all the knowledge and power that the architects had accumulated over millions of years. The galaxy settled into its new order with humanity as reluctant but capable leaders who balanced power with compassion and wisdom with humility. Other species found their own roles in the cosmic community, while younger civilizations looked forward to eventually joining the galactic family. The universe had found new shepherds who would guide its development for ages to come. Jake's fleet disappeared into the darkness between galaxies, carrying the hope and responsibility of all the life they left behind. Somewhere in the distant cosmos, another young species waited for protection and guidance from those who had inherited the ancient mission of the architects. The cycle continued as it had for millions of years, with new guardians taking up the eternal task of nurturing life throughout the infinite universe. Admiral Kreshivor of the hegemony of Krath stood on the bridge of his flagship watching the final preparations for the largest military operation in his species' history. 12 star systems had contributed ships to this massive fleet that would prove once and for all that no ancient artifacts could protect the humans from superior numbers and firepower. The reptilian commander had spent 50 years fighting wars across the galaxy, and he refused to bow before any species, no matter what their supposed guardians might threaten. The Krath fleet consisted of over 3,000 warships ranging from small fighters to massive dreadnoughts that could crack planets. Each vessel carried weapons that had been tested in dozens of conflicts and crews that had never known defeat in battle. Kreshivor believed that the mysterious guardians were nothing more than advanced automated systems that could be overwhelmed by sheer numbers and determination. On Earth, President Maria Santos sat in the Emergency Command Center deep beneath the capital, watching reports from around the solar system. The Guardian ships had detected the approaching Krath fleet weeks ago and had offered to simply destroy the invaders before they could threaten human space. Maria had refused this option because she believed that humanity needed to find peaceful solutions whenever possible, even when dealing with hostile aliens. Marine Colonel Frank Turner disagreed with the president's decision, but followed his orders to prepare Earth's defenses for a possible invasion. The tough career soldier had spent his life protecting human settlements on distant worlds, and he knew that some enemies could only be stopped with overwhelming force. His Marines were ready to fight, but their weapons seemed pathetic compared to the alien technology surrounding them. Dr. Rachel Moss worked frantically in her laboratory studying the architect technology that had been appearing across Earth for the past several months. The brilliant physicist had made breakthrough discoveries almost daily as ancient installations revealed their secrets to human science. She was beginning to understand that the technology operated on principles that bridged the gap between science and what primitive cultures might have called magic. The architect installations were teaching humanity to manipulate matter at the quantum level using focused thought patterns amplified by crystalline matrix systems. Rachel had successfully moved objects across her lab using nothing but mental concentration and properly tuned equipment. She suspected that this was only the beginning of what humans might eventually be able to accomplish. Communications from the Krath fleet arrived at Earth demanding immediate surrender and threatening to destroy every human settlement in the solar system. Admiral Kreshovor's message was broadcast on all frequencies, making it clear that he considered humanity to be nothing more than another primitive species that needed to be taught proper respect for their betters. President Santos responded with her own message explaining that humans wanted peace with all species, but would defend themselves if attacked. She warned the Krath commander that the Guardian fleets were far more powerful than anything his people had ever encountered. Her words were ignored as the alien fleet continued its approach toward Earth at maximum speed. The first Guardian ships appeared at the edge of the solar system just as the Krath fleet dropped out of hyperspace. Protector 7 and 11 other Guardian units positioned themselves between the invaders and Earth, while their massive vessels began powering up weapon systems that had not been used for millions of years. The ancient ships dwarfed even the largest Krath dreadnoughts and seemed to bend space around themselves as they prepared for battle. Admiral Kreshovor was impressed by the size of the Guardian ships, but remained confident that his superior numbers would carry the day. He ordered his fleet to spread out and attack from multiple directions while his heaviest ships concentrated their fire on individual Guardian vessels. The Krath had perfected these tactics over centuries of warfare and had never found an enemy they could not overwhelm. The Guardian response was unlike anything the Krath had ever seen in battle. Instead of firing weapons or launching fighters, the ancient ships began to manipulate the space around them in ways that defied conventional physics. Protector 7 reached out with invisible forces and gently moved one of Jupiter's moons into a new orbit, while other Guardians began redirecting asteroid belts and creating temporary gravitational fields. Colonel Turner watched the battle from Earth's command center and felt his jaw drop as he realized what the Guardians were doing. They were not attacking the Krath fleet directly, but were instead demonstrating their ability to manipulate entire solar systems as if they were toys. The message was clear without a single shot being fired. Resistance was not just futile, but completely pointless. One Guardian ship created a new star by compressing hydrogen from Jupiter's atmosphere into a fusion reaction that lit up the entire solar system. Another Guardian moved Mars several thousand miles closer to Earth before moving it back to its original position. The display of cosmic engineering was so far beyond current galactic technology that even the Krath crews began to panic. Dr. Moss felt the architect installations on Earth responding to the crisis by downloading vast amounts of new information directly into her mind. She suddenly understood principles of physics that human science had never imagined and saw how consciousness itself could be used to reshape reality. The knowledge was overwhelming, but she managed to maintain her sanity by focusing on the immediate needs of her species. Admiral Kreshovor ordered his fleet to withdraw after watching the Guardians casually rearrange the solar system around them. His ships had not been harmed, but the demonstration of power had shattered any illusion that the Krath could threaten humanity through conventional warfare. The reptilian commander sent a message of surrender and begged forgiveness for doubting the authority of the protected ones. The Guardian ships allowed the Krath fleet to leave human space, but not before scanning their vessels and downloading complete records of their civilization. Protector 7 explained to President Santos that the architects needed to understand all potential threats to humanity's development. The information would be used to determine whether the Krath could be trusted to coexist peacefully with the protected ones. Dr. Moss made her most important discovery during the crisis as the architect installations revealed their true purpose. The technology appearing on Earth was not just advanced tools, but was actually a teaching system designed to gradually elevate human consciousness to cosmic levels. Each installation was programmed to reveal new knowledge only when humanity was ready to use it responsibly. The physicist realized that the architects had not simply vanished from the galaxy, but had evolved beyond physical existence into beings of pure consciousness and energy. They had left behind their technology and chosen successors to continue their work of seeding and protecting life throughout the universe. Humanity was being prepared to eventually make the same transition. President Santos called for a meeting of Earth's leaders to discuss what had been learned during the crisis. The demonstration of Guardian power had shown that humanity was protected by forces beyond imagination, but it had also revealed the enormous responsibility that came with their new status. Earth would need to develop new institutions and philosophies to guide their role as inheritors of galactic civilization. Colonel Turner began working with Guardian advisors to develop new training programs for human military forces. The old concepts of warfare and defense would need to be completely reconsidered now that humanity had access to technology that could manipulate space and time. Future conflicts would be resolved through demonstrations of cosmic power rather than traditional battles. The news of the Krath defeat spread quickly throughout the galaxy, as other species realized that the Guardians had not been exaggerating their capabilities. Several aggressive civilizations that had been considering attacks on human space immediately abandoned their plans and sent diplomatic messages expressing their desire for peaceful relations with the protected ones. Dr. Moss published her preliminary findings about architect technology and human potential in a report that changed how humanity viewed their own future. The revelation that consciousness could be used to directly manipulate reality opened new fields of scientific study and philosophical inquiry. Earth's universities began developing curricula that combined traditional physics with meditation and mental discipline training. The crisis with the Krath had demonstrated that humanity's protection was absolute, but it had also shown that their responsibilities were just beginning. The galaxy was watching to see how the protected ones would use their newfound power and whether they would prove worthy of the trust the architects had placed in them. The real test of human character was still to come. Dr. Kevin Park had been studying ancient stone circles for 15 years, but he had never seen anything like what was happening at Stonehenge today. The archaeologist stood in the morning mist watching the massive stones begin to glow with the same blue light that had appeared on Nexus Prime Station 3 days ago. The energy patterns moved across the surface of each stone like living things, and the air itself seemed to vibrate with power. Kevin pulled out his tablet and started recording everything he could see. The stones were rearranging themselves into new positions without any visible force moving them. What had been a simple circle for thousands of years was becoming something far more complex. New stones were rising from the ground, where none had existed before, and the entire structure was growing larger by the hour. Similar events were happening all around Earth as ancient sites revealed their true nature. The pyramids in Egypt were glowing with internal light, while stone circles in Scotland and Ireland were transforming into active energy arrays. Even underwater ruins that had been hidden for centuries were beginning to surface and activate. Humanity was learning that their planet had never been as simple as they had believed. Captain Susan Bell received the emergency call while her ship was on patrol near Jupiter. The USS New Horizon was Earth's most advanced warship, and Susan had been chosen to command it because of her steady nerves and quick thinking. Now she was being ordered to investigate massive objects that had appeared throughout the solar system without any warning or explanation. The objects were enormous beyond anything humans had ever built. Some were larger than Earth's moon, and they had simply materialized near gas giants and asteroid fields as if they had always been there. Susan's sensors could barely begin to analyze the technology she was seeing. The ship seemed to be made of materials that bent light around them and moved through space without any visible engines. Susan ordered her crew to approach the largest of the unknown vessels carefully. Lieutenant Bobby Chen was scanning the object. With every sensor they had, while Communications Officer Nancy Williams tried to establish contact. The ship showed no response to their signals, but it also showed no signs of hostility toward the approaching human vessel. The New Horizon had moved to within a few miles of the alien ship when a voice suddenly filled their bridge. The speaker used perfect English and spoke in a calm tone that somehow conveyed vast intelligence and unlimited patience. The voice identified itself as Guardian Prime Unit Designation Protector 7 and welcomed the humans as the protected ones. Susan felt, her hands shaking as she responded to the Guardian. She had been trained for first contact situations, but nothing had prepared her for meeting an artificial intelligence that claimed to have been waiting for humanity since before their civilization began. The Guardian explained that it was one of many such units left behind by the architects to watch over their chosen inheritors. Protector 7 invited Susan and a small team to come aboard the Guardian vessel. The human captain selected Dr. Carl Brooks, her science officer, and Marine Sergeant Linda Murphy to accompany her to the meeting. They took a shuttle across the short distance between ships and docked at an airlock that opened automatically to receive them. The interior of the Guardian ship was unlike anything the humans had ever seen. The corridors seemed to stretch forever in directions that hurt to look at directly. The walls were made of a smooth material that showed star maps and technical diagrams whenever they looked closely. Gravity seemed to work normally, but the humans could sense that the technology around them operated on principles they did not understand. Protector 7 appeared to them as a column of shifting light that could take different shapes as needed. The Guardian explained that the architects had been exploring the galaxy long before most current species had evolved. They had found that life followed certain patterns, and that eventually one species in each cosmic age would develop the traits needed to carry on their work. The Guardian showed the humans images of other protected species from earlier ages. Each one had eventually grown beyond their home worlds to become shepherds and protectors of galactic civilization. The architects had guided their development and then stepped back to allow them to find their own path. When each protected species reached maturity, the architects would move on to seed new regions of space. Dr. Brooks asked why humanity had been chosen over the thousands of other intelligent species in the galaxy. Protector 7 explained that the architects looked for specific combinations of traits that appeared rarely in any species. The protected ones had to be curious enough to explore beyond their home world, but defensive enough to fight when threatened. They needed to show deep emotional connections to their own kind while remaining capable of forming bonds with alien species. Most importantly, the protected ones had to demonstrate the ability to sacrifice themselves for others while also being willing to kill to protect their companions. The balance between compassion and violence was extremely rare, and the architects had waited millions of years for it to appear in humanity. The death of Dr. Lisa Grant and the response of her crewmates had triggered recognition systems throughout the galaxy. Susan asked what role the Guardians would play in human development. Protector 7 explained that the Guardian fleets would establish protective barriers around human space to prevent interference from hostile species. They would also begin revealing architect technology on Earth and other human worlds, but only at a pace that humanity could safely absorb. The Guardian showed them star charts that revealed the true scope of architect civilization. Hidden installations existed throughout the galaxy containing technology and knowledge that humanity would inherit over time. Some of the installations were built inside planets, while others were disguised as natural phenomena. All of them had been waiting for the protected ones to claim their inheritance. Sergeant Murphy asked if humanity was expected to become like the architects and eventually leave the galaxy to seed new regions of space. Protector 7 confirmed that this was the ultimate destiny of all protected species, but said that the process would take thousands of years. Humanity would first need to learn to use architect technology and then gradually take on the responsibility of guiding younger species. The Guardian explained that the current galactic civilization would continue to exist, but would eventually become a junior partner to humanity. This transition had happened before when previous protected species had matured, and the process was designed to be gradual and peaceful. The other species would benefit from human guidance, just as humanity would benefit from their diverse perspectives and abilities. Dr. Brooks was amazed by the scope of what he was learning. The architect installations on Earth were already beginning to teach human scientists new principles of physics and engineering. Within a few years, humanity would have access to faster-than-light travel, unlimited energy sources, and medical technology that could extend human lifespans indefinitely. Susan felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders as she realized what this meant for her species. Humanity had gone from being alone in the universe to being responsible for guiding galactic civilization. The transition would not be easy, and there would certainly be species that resisted human authority. The Guardians would protect humanity during this vulnerable period, but eventually humans would need to stand on their own. The meeting with Protector 7 lasted for several hours, as the Guardian answered every question the humans could think of. When they finally returned to the New Horizon, Susan immediately began preparing reports for Earth Command and the civilian government. The world needed to know that everything had changed, and that humanity's future was now linked to the entire galaxy. As news of the Guardian encounter spread throughout human space, people reacted with mixtures of excitement and fear. Some welcomed the idea of inheriting advanced technology, while others worried about the responsibility of guiding alien civilizations. Religious leaders debated whether humanity was ready for such a role, while scientists worked frantically to understand the new physics being revealed by architect installations. The Guardians continued their work throughout the solar system, establishing energy barriers and communication networks that would protect Earth from any possible threats. Their massive ships became a common sight in Earth's skies as they went about their ancient duties. Humanity was no longer alone and would never be the same again. 3 months after the Terra Nova limped back to Earth with news of first contact gone wrong, representatives from dozens of alien species gathered at Nexus Prime Station. The massive structure floated in neutral space between 3 different star systems and had served as the meeting place for the Galactic Council for over 1,000 years. Today, they would decide what to do about the humans. Ambassador Zekthorn of the Rigelian Empire stood before the Great Assembly Hall and spoke in the clicking language of his people. The tall, insect-like being had been one of the most powerful voices on the Council for 50 years and believed that aggressive species should be contained before they could spread their violence across the galaxy. His speech about the human attack on the peaceful Zephyrian vessel was filled with anger and fear. Council Speaker Thielara listened to the accusations with growing concern. The ancient being had lived for over 300 years and had seen many species join the galactic community. Some came in peace while others had to be forced to follow the rules that kept thousands of worlds safe from war. The tall, blue-skinned leader hoped that humans could be reasoned with before more violence. Occurred Dr. Elena Vasquez sat in the special section reserved for new species and felt very alone among all the strange alien faces around her. Earth had sent their best diplomat to represent humanity at this first meeting with the Galactic Council. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes who had spent her life trying to solve problems with words instead of weapons. The evidence against humanity was presented by Commander Vextar of the Zephyrian Collective. The pale gray alien with large black eyes showed recordings from his ship during the encounter with the Terra Nova. The images clearly showed the human vessel firing first and continuing to fight, even when his people tried to withdraw from the battle. Elena stood up to defend her species when given the chance to speak. She explained that the humans had been exploring peacefully when they were attacked without warning. The death of Dr. Lisa Grant had been caused by Zephyrian weapons, and the human crew had only fought back to protect themselves from further harm. Her voice shook with emotion as she described the loss of a brilliant scientist who had dreamed of meeting alien life. Many of the council members were not impressed by Elena's explanation. The Corthani representative hissed that emotional responses were a sign of primitive thinking. The crystalline beings from Xerion Prime vibrated in patterns. That meant they found human behavior unpredictable and dangerous. Even some of the more peaceful species seemed worried about allowing humans to spread beyond their home system. Ambassador Zekthorn called for an immediate vote to classify humans as a Category 5 aggressive species. This classification would mean that Earth would be surrounded by automated defense stations that would destroy any human ship that tried to leave their solar system. It was essentially a prison sentence for the entire human race, and Elena knew she had failed in her mission to secure peace. The vote was held using the ancient crystal voting system that had been installed when Nexus Prime was first built. Each species placed their decision into slots that would tabulate the results and display them for all to see. Elena watched helplessly as species after species voted to contain humanity within their home system. Just as the final votes were being counted, something strange began to happen throughout the council chamber. Ancient artifacts that had been decorations for centuries suddenly began to glow with soft blue light. The walls themselves seemed to come alive with patterns of energy that pulsed like a heartbeat. Council members looked around in confusion, as their translators started picking up signals they had never heard before. The station's central artificial intelligence had been silent for over 1,000 years, except for basic maintenance announcements. Most council members had forgotten it even existed. Now the ancient computer spoke with a voice that carried authority built into every word. The AI announced that Protocol Omega was now in effect, and that the protected ones had finally been found. Speaker Thielara stood up in shock and demanded to know what Protocol Omega meant. The station AI explained that long ago a species called the Architects had left specific instructions buried deep in the computer systems of every major installation in the galaxy. These instructions had been waiting for the right conditions to activate, and those conditions had finally been met. The AI told the stunned council members that the Architects had been the first species to achieve true galactic civilization. They had seeded life on countless worlds and guided the development of many species before mysteriously disappearing millions of years ago. Before they left, they had established protocols to protect any species that matched certain genetic and behavioral markers. Elena felt her heart racing as the AI continued its explanation. The protected ones were described as a species that would show extreme emotional responses to the death of their companions and would fight desperately to defend their own kind. They would be curious about other life forms, but would respond with violence when threatened. Most importantly, they would show the capacity for both great cruelty and great compassion. The genetic scans taken during the recent encounter had been automatically analyzed by sleeping architect systems throughout the galaxy. Humanity matched every single marker that the architects had left behind. The humans were not just another species to be judged by the Council. They were inheritors of the greatest civilization the galaxy had ever known. Ambassador Zekthorn demanded proof that the AI was telling the truth. Ancient holographic displays activated throughout the chamber showing star maps that detailed the locations of hidden architect installations across the galaxy. Many were in systems that had been explored for centuries, but the technology had remained invisible until this moment. The AI announced that Guardian fleets were already moving to establish protective barriers around human space. Any attempt to harm the protected ones would be met with overwhelming force from weapons that made current galactic technology look like primitive tools. The architects had prepared for this day, and their automated systems would ensure that humanity survived to fulfill their destiny. Elena could hardly believe what she was hearing. In the span of a few minutes, humanity had gone from being classified as a dangerous species to being declared the most important life forms in the galaxy. The council members sat in stunned silence as they tried to understand what this meant for their own civilizations. Speaker Thylara asked the AI what role the council should play now that the architects had declared their will. The ancient computer responded that the council could continue to govern as they always had, but they must never interfere with human development. The protected ones would choose their own path, and the galaxy would adapt to their decisions. Commander. Vextar stood up and asked for forgiveness from the human representative. The Zephyrian had not known what his attack on the Terra Nova would trigger, but he accepted responsibility for starting a conflict with the most important species in galactic history. His large black eyes showed genuine remorse as he bowed before Elena. The vote to contain humanity was officially canceled and replaced with a unanimous decision to welcome Earth into the galactic community as an honored member. Elena was given quarters on Nexus Prime and invited to establish a permanent embassy for her people. She accepted the offer but warned that humans would need time to adjust to their new role in galactic affairs. As the council session ended and representatives began returning to their ships, Elena remained in the great chamber, looking at the still glowing architect artifacts. She thought about Lisa Grant, and how the young scientist's death had somehow saved humanity from isolation and imprisonment. The galaxy had changed forever, and Elena knew that Earth would never be the same again. Far across space, the Guardian. Fleets continued to emerge from hiding places where they had waited for millions of years. Ancient ships larger than cities began moving toward human space to establish the protective barriers that would ensure the survival of the protected ones. The real changes were just beginning. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Terra Nova watching the stars through the main window and thinking about how far from home they had traveled. 3 months in deep space had changed his crew in ways he never expected when they left Earth orbit back in March. The ship hummed quietly around them as it moved through the dark between stars at speeds that still amazed him, even after 20 years in space. Lisa Grant looked up from her science station where she had been studying readings from the long-range sensors for the past 6 hours. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her brown eyes showed the excitement that always came when she found something new. She had joined this mission because she wanted to find life beyond Earth, and today might be the day that dream came true. Tony Rodriguez wiped grease from his hands with an old cloth as he climbed up from the engine room through the floor hatch. The big man always kept their ship running no matter what problems they faced, and Jake trusted him with their lives every single day. Tony had fixed everything from broken air recyclers to damaged hull plates during their long journey to the edge of known space. Amy Carter sat at the communications desk listening to the static that filled the space between stars and hoping to hear something that might be a signal from another world. The young woman had the best ears on the ship and could pick out patterns in noise that others missed completely. She wore headphones most of the time and spoke in a quiet voice that made everyone lean closer to hear what she had to say. The Terra Nova was not a big ship, but it was built for long trips far from Earth. Jake had requested this mission because he believed humanity needed to explore beyond their small corner of the galaxy. The ship carried enough supplies for 2 years and had equipment for studying anything they might find in the outer systems. Lisa suddenly stood up from her station and pointed at the main screen where new readings were appearing. The sensors had detected something large moving through space about 50,000 miles away from their current position. The object was too big to be an asteroid and too regular in shape to be natural. Jake felt his heart start beating faster as he realized what this might mean. Amy pulled off her headphones and looked at the captain with wide eyes. She had been picking up signals for the past 10 minutes but had thought they were just equipment. Noise until now. The signals had a pattern that was clearly artificial and seemed to be coming from the same direction as the large object on their sensors. Tony moved to his engineering station and started running checks on all their systems. If they were about to make first contact with alien life, he wanted to make sure their ship was ready for anything that might happen. The engines were running perfectly and all their defensive systems were online and ready to use if needed. Jake ordered Amy to try making contact using the mathematical sequences that scientists on Earth had developed for just this situation. Simple numbers and basic equations that any intelligent species should be able to understand. Amy sent the signals toward the unknown object, and they all waited to see what would happen next. The response came back in less than 5 minutes. The alien signals followed the same mathematical pattern, but used different frequencies and timing. That showed they understood what the humans were trying to say. Lisa was recording everything while Tony made sure their shields were ready and their weapons were powered up just in case. The alien ship became visible on their main screen as it moved closer to the Terra Nova. Jake had never seen anything like it before. The vessel was smooth and curved like it had been grown rather than built. Silver metal reflected the light from distant stars and made the ship look almost alive as it moved through space. Amy was working hard to establish better communication with the aliens. She had moved beyond simple math to basic concepts like distance and time. The aliens seemed to understand and were responding with their own versions of the same ideas. Jake felt hopeful that they could find a way to talk to each other without any problems. The alien ship stopped about 10,000 miles away from the Terra Nova, and both vessels just floated in space while their crews tried to figure out what to do next. Jake could see smaller lights moving around inside the alien ship through what looked like windows or viewing ports. He wondered what the aliens looked like and whether they were as nervous about this meeting as his own crew. Lisa had been studying the alien ship with every sensor they had and was amazed by what she was seeing. The technology was far beyond anything humans had built. The ship seemed to bend space around itself in ways that human science said should be impossible. She was taking notes as fast as she could write. Everything changed when the alien ship suddenly moved much closer to the Terra Nova. Jake ordered Tony to raise their shields, but the movement was so fast that there was no time to react. The alien vessel was now only a few hundred miles away and seemed to be scanning the human ship with some kind of energy beam. Amy lost contact with the aliens at that moment. The signals just stopped coming, and her equipment showed only static, where the clear communication had been before. She tried sending new messages but got no response from the alien ship. Something had gone wrong, but nobody knew what had happened. The alien ship began moving in a pattern around the Terra Nova that made Jake very uncomfortable. It looked like the kind of movement a predator might make while circling its prey. He ordered Tony to prepare their weapons and told Amy to send a message explaining that humans meant no harm to anyone. The first shot from the alien ship hit their forward shields and sent shockwaves through the entire vessel. Jake was thrown against his command chair while Lisa grabbed onto her station to keep from falling. Tony shouted that their shields were down to 60% power and falling fast with each new hit they took. Jake ordered Tony to return fire, while Amy kept trying to re-establish communication with the aliens. The Terra Nova fired back with their plasma cannons and managed to hit the alien ship several times. The alien vessel seemed surprised by the return fire and pulled back to a safer distance. The battle lasted for almost an hour with both ships, trading shots across the darkness of space. The Terra Nova was smaller and less advanced, but Jake and his crew fought with everything they had. They managed to damage the alien ship enough to make it retreat, but their own vessel was badly hurt in the fight. Lisa was working at her station when a power surge caused her console to explode in a shower of sparks and flame. The blast threw her across the bridge, and she hit the far wall with a terrible sound that Jake would never forget. Tony and Amy rushed to help her, but it was already too late. Lisa Grant died from her injuries, while her friends held her and tried to stop the bleeding. The alien ship pulled away and disappeared into the darkness between stars. Jake and his remaining crew were left alone with their damaged ship and the body of their friend. The first contact between humans and aliens had ended in violence and death. None of them knew that this moment would change the entire galaxy in ways they could never imagine. Far across space, ancient systems that had been sleeping for thousands of years suddenly woke up and began sending signals to distant watchers. The death of Lisa Grant had triggered something that had been waiting since before human civilization began. The galaxy would never be the same again.